Before we get into the stories, I would like to let you all know that I'm taking story submissions to narrate. I will credit you in the description of the video unless you ask me not to, so if you have an experience or story in mind that you would like me to read, then you can email me at feedingonfear@gmail.com, and I will be sure to include it in my videos. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy the stories. When I was about 10 years old, my brother came home to die on a frigid day in January. Purple lesions ravaged the skin that hardly covered his bones. He looked an awful lot like a skeleton, unlike the friendly visitor I'd come to know over my short lifetime. My brother Tobias was many years older than me, so I didn't have much of a relationship with him. Still, he made a point to take the train home to New Haven for the holidays, filling our living room with plenty of gifts. One evening, he bought Mom the Fendi baguette she always wanted to show off to her friends at the Junior Women's Club. For my dad's gift, he purchased a George Foreman grill, and all his co-workers at the office buzzed about it. For me, he bought a creepy crawler's oven with liquid and mold containers. Last time he came home, I was excited to show him all the bugs and monsters I made. "You better not," my mom said solemnly. I came home from school one day and my arms were filled with the new batch of miniature reptiles and amphibians I had created. They were a big hit at recess and I knew Tobias would love them. "He's super tired, honey." "I thought they would cheer Toby up." She shook her head and sobbed, drawing a handkerchief to her face. "Honey, we talked about this. Toby's very sick, and he won't even be able to hear you now." My mom cried loudly as my dad slung an arm around her, directing her down the hallway. "Devin, your grandparents are in the living room. Why don't you go join them?" His words caused my mom to cry even louder for some reason, as my dad ushered her away. When they reached the living room, I heard the faint words of the live-in hospice nurse, that it wouldn't be long now, and something about hearing the death rattle. When the sobs faded and the conversation died down, I turned the knob to his room as quietly as I could. Standing in the doorway, my heart fluttered. My brother not only looked like a skeleton with his frail exterior and dissolving skin, but like one of the gray aliens I made in my creepy crawler's oven a couple of weeks ago. Unlike the alien, however, he had several tubes attached to him that were hooked up to his boxy, beeping machines. His body looked so thin that I swear it started to fade into the sheets of the bed. "Toby," I said hoarsely. I waited a few minutes before I shouted his name. "Toby!" Minutes passed before his purple lips quivered and let out an audible groan that dragged on for several seconds. After it ended, 6 booming words escaped his lips. "Look for me on the walls." A longer groan ensued, these words followed by a long beep from the machine. Everything seemed to move in slow motion as the nurse, my parents, and grandparents rushed into the room. I don't remember much except for shuffling feet and screams and my father whisking me out of the room and closing the door in my face. The adults were in the room for several minutes before my grandmother finally left with her head cast down. She threw her doughy arms around me and said, "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Your brother's gone to heaven with the angels." As the other adults came out of the room one by one to hug me, apologize, and sob into my small body, I wondered if I should be crying too. I supposed I loved my brother, but I didn't know him that well. To me, he was just that friendly visitor who bought me gifts and read me stories. He popped in and out of my life like some magical elf that appeared only for holidays and disappeared like Santa up the chimney or Frosty the Snowman on a sunny day. I put my hands over my eyes and pretended to cry with them. After a while, I asked if it was okay to go up to my room, and my parents said yeah. At once, I hurried up the stairs and slammed the door behind me. For hours, I plopped onto my dinosaur bed sheets and stared at the walls. I stared at the walls for so long that I thought my eyes would bleed. The walls of my room were sponge-painted blue, covered in posters of my favorite baseball players and movies. The shapes on my walls were unmoving. As my eyes drew tears and I yawned, I started to drift off to sleep. The room didn't have any windows, so I couldn't tell whether it was nighttime or not. but I suppose night was nearing by the increasing shadows in the room. Something was strange about these shadows, though. They weren't the typical black or gray, but shades of green. I blinked as green circles danced around my walls like a stage spotlight. "You awake, Devi boy?" A hollow voice echoed. "It's time to wake up." I was rubbing my eyes. "Who are you?" "You know who I am, silly. I don't have a lot of time." I blinked twice and the green circles faded altogether. All at once, the circles morphed into the shape of a person. The shape looked a little under 6 feet tall, maybe taller, its figure reaching the brim of the ceiling. "Toby, is that you?" "Who else would it be?" The figure let out this bellowing laugh and stretched atop the ceiling, twisting around the fan in almost this rhythmic pattern. "But I thought you were dead." The figure unleashed this laugh again, this time twisting onto the carpeted floor, its green glow matching the soda I spilled the previous day. "I thought I would die too, but it's the most unusual thing. You don't go to heaven or hell like we learned in church. Don't tell Mom and Dad, though, and especially don't tell Grandma." "I won't, but if you're not dead, what are you?" "I'm hiding." His voice changed from this bellowing pitch to a dull whisper. "What do you mean?" "You gotta swear not to tell anybody." "I swear, Toby, I swear." "People don't die," this figure whispered, draining from the carpets back to a small circle on my wall. "They hide." "From what?" "Well, I don't know yet. I just know that we're hiding. We're all hiding." The figure spoke these words. I saw dozens of green circles bouncing around on my walls. They were varying shades of green. Some spoke in whispers like my brother, others spoke in gibberish that might have been different languages. I covered my ears and the sounds grew louder and more varied. I jammed my eyes shut as the lights flickered and burned into my retinas, and as I screamed I heard my brother's voice again. "People don't die, they hide, Devin. They hide, they must never be found." I screamed so loud that my cat Jasper hollered from the other room. I screamed so loud that my mom and my dad and my grandparents, and even the live-in nurse hurried upstairs and forced their way into my room. "It's okay, honey," my mom said, pulling me into her chest. "It's okay. We're all upset." As the others crowded around me, I continued to scream. But the sound had disappeared. I still heard my brother's voice loud and clear. "People don't die, they hide." As the days faded into weeks and months, I saw these green circles everywhere, bouncing about the side of buildings, circling the screens of the downtown movie theater, even on the fence in my backyard sometimes. Sometimes the circles morphed into the shapes of people. Other times they looked like just reflections. One time during a sleepover, I swore I even saw the circles morph into the shapes of falling bats on the outside of my tent. I tried not to scream when I saw them. After a while, I tried not to look. When I didn't look, though, I heard their whispers, which usually just sounded like gibberish. As the months faded into years, I checked myself into therapy. The only chance I had to stop seeing these circles, to stop hearing these awful voices. As a college student, my campus therapist surmised that the shapes and whispers were my way of coping with loss and grief. He assured me that people really do die, and even took me into the local morgue, which his cousin owned, to show me what corpses looked like. I admitted that I'd never seen my brother's corpse when he died. Seeing the corpses of an old woman and a man as skinny as my brother made me realize how natural death was a part of life. I kept in touch with my therapist after college, and with each passing day I began to hear the voices less and less. For the first time in forever, I could appreciate the sounds of the outdoors that I'd taken for granted. Even the menial ones like a gust of wind, or a kid screaming on the playground. For the first time in forever, I could appreciate the laughter of Julia, the girl I took on a first date at the local Starbucks. I loved the sound of her laughing, and the sounds of her laughter as we engaged in the silliest conversations. Throughout my life, I heard many wonderful sounds like church bells on my wedding day, or the sound of my son Jack crying in my arms. I fell in love with the lights and sounds of my life, until the day I started to cough and hack profusely. My wife had taken Jack to daycare as I sat in my home office, typing a draft of my latest article. I felt the urge to cough and a large bulging urge rising from my chest. Much as I tried to ignore it, I finally unleashed it. I hacked up so powerful that I doubled over onto my desk and even got blood on the keyboard. And I began to shiver as cold blood dripped from my mouth onto the keys and all over the floor. I scrambled to find my cell phone and dialed 911. I continued to convulse blood and cry. After I'd emptied all the contents of blood from my stomach, I collapsed onto the floor with the receiver to my ear. 911, what's your emergency? Hello? With what little held strength I had left, I pushed my body across the floor to the phone. I threw up a lot of blood, I said weakly. I'm sorry about that, sir, the dispatcher said. Many moments passed before she spoke again. Are you there? Hello? Sir, the dispatcher said, her voice suddenly a lot lower and more muffled. You better start thinking about a good place to hide. As the voice began to cackle, a swarm of green circles danced around my body.